everyone, and welcome. My name is Barbie Winterbottom, and I am the CEO and founder of the Business of HR and your host for today's episode of The Table. We are bringing you some very special guests this month who are involved in mental health awareness. And today's guest is specifically involved with women's wellness, mental health, and well being for women who are working, regardless of whether they're working at home or in the workplace, or they get paid for their work or they don't. We all know that women work constantly, and not all of us earn a paycheck for the work we do, but that work is incredibly valuable nonetheless. And so I am thrilled to invite and welcome our guest today to the table. So help me welcome Veroniek Vermeulen, who is the CEO and founder of Silata. Welcome today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very honored to be on your show and to talk about mental well-being as it's such an important topic.
It really is. And, it's always been top of mind for many of us who work with people and are in the people space. But since the pandemic, I think the focus on this area of our work lives and our well-being, our total well-being, has significantly grown, right? We're all much more aware of how we're feeling and how that impacts us from day to day. I know myself, I've had my periodic breakdowns where I'm like, nothing's working, nothing's right, everything's bad, nothing's going the way it should be going. And then I have a conversation with a friend, or we go to lunch, or I take a walk, or whatever, and I kind of hit that reset button. What I love is that you've identified a need and a niche here to support women in a really unique way. So I'd love to hear about kind of your story and what got you here and what made you decide to step into this space and bring forward this amazing product. And we will then share with our viewers some pictures of your product so that they can really understand and get a feel for it. So first, tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what prompted you to start this company.
So that would go about 10 years back in time. So I had the perfect life, so to say, which wasn't perfect at all. So on paper, it looked perfect. I ticked all the boxes. I had an amazing life if you want to look into what society would say would be what you should achieve in life, what I thought my parents wanted me to do in life. And I looked at it and I was so disappointed. I was like, is this all there is to life? Like, I did all these things that were expected for me, and now I'm here not being happy at all. I just felt completely numb. And so I actually went, like, a friend told me about meditation. Now we're talking 10 years ago. So meditation was this thing. I had no idea what it was. There were no meditation apps. It was, there were people going to monasteries, but that was pretty much what I knew about it. And so I booked a trip to Nepal, and I went there, signed up for a meditation course, which I never did, by the way, because I was very distracted at that time. And it was more of a guess, and I was like, really, do I need this meditation? I don't even know what it is. And so instead of going to the meditation course, I signed up to go paragliding in Himalayas. Now, this is a pretty crazy thing because no one goes paragliding in Himalayas. Like, it's way too high, it's way too dangerous, because you cannot, you don't know what the thermics are doing, so you can just drop down. But I was in a place in my life where I was like, I don't care. I just want to do this and get me. I also know since then that whatever you need in life, if you're open to it, it will come to you, because meditation found me. On my first path to get to the Himalayas, I met this Buddhist man, and he told me the basics about meditation. And so he was like, well, meditation is pretty much nothing else than just being in a moment and honoring your breath for giving the life to you, because you can do without food for months, you can do without water for weeks, but you can just like minutes without breath, and that's the end. I was like, oh, that's actually a way I never thought about it. Well, we take our breath for granted, and so this triggered something in me, and then of course, I had to get up to this 5,500 meters if I wanted to go paragliding there. Like, you can't just take a train up. So I had to walk, and I had I took a porter with me to carry my bags, but then he didn't speak English. I don't speak Nepalese, and so for like 5 days, I was on my own in the Himalayas in this beautiful landscape, just pretty much focusing on my breathing and just in this solitude. And that was the best meditation course I could ever do. So we went up, we did paraglide down, and it was an amazing thing. But the thing that changed my life was the next day when I had to acclimatize in the Himalayas, and I was walking on my own. It's a beautiful landscape, and I felt happier than ever before. I felt this happiness from within, and I couldn't remember having felt this much of joy and intense happiness. And so I realized, okay, I don't know what this meditation thing is, but I want to know more about it, and I will go to retreats and learn more about it. And that started a personal journey for me to go to monasteries. I would go to different countries and live with the nuns for a couple of weeks and live according to their rituals and learn everything there is to know about meditation. And it was profound, and it really changed my life. But what I struggled with, so I more and more got closer to myself, because meditation is really, I don't know, maybe for people that haven't meditated before, what it means for me is really connecting to who I am. And that's something that I hadn't learned in my life. I'm an engineer from background. My family, where I grew up, was very rational. It was always about like, okay, what do you think? It wasn't things about feelings, emotions. Emotions were bad and negative. You don't talk about them. And so I told myself, okay, I'll be a good girl and I'll be very rational. And I always thought I'm a very rational person. Then years later, I realized that I'm actually hypersensitive, and I just suppressed these emotions for so long. And I think what is so beautiful about meditation is that by being in the present moment, you connect to yourself and you feel everything that is there, but also there isn't any negative, because if you're in the present moment, the negative is already gone by the time. Even if you're in a very tough time in your life, if you're really in the moment, there is no negative. It's just not there. It's just being. And so I got from sometimes being like, you can get into this like complaining, or because when you're successful and you get a lot, you also think you deserve a lot and you should get the best things, and expectations are kind of the
killer of joy.
Exactly, the killer of joy. And so this was kind of what taught me a lot as a person. But then I also realized how hard it is when you come back in day-to-day life, because I would go to a retreat, I would go to a monastery, you live with the nuns, right? You have no choice. You follow their schedule. So you do meditate, and everything you do pretty much is a meditation or a form of meditation. But then you come back, I was still in my day-to-day job, my social life, everything would catch up with me again. And I forgot to meditate. I simply forgot. It wasn't that I didn't want to. I just didn't have time for it anymore in the day. And so I started to do a lot of research, like how do you build a new habit? And when you look at the experts in the world about habit creation, one thing they all talk about is having a trigger, having an anchor, something that can remind you. Mm-hmm. And that was the first thing that I started to build, which is kind of having an anchor that you can use during meditation. So first of all, you see it in the morning, it will remind you, but also you use it during meditation to give it your intention. And so you can kind of rewire your brain. Like, if I hold this, I can do this, or like you tell yourself the one thing you want more in your life. So maybe it is, I will not freak out when my kid has a tantrum. I'll stay calm when in a business meeting this goes totally wrong way. I feel confident about myself. Whatever it is, you kind of repeat that and you hold that anchor. And so you rewire your brain that whenever you hold that anchor, you feel it, and you really feel that you are confident, and you know that you can do it, and you do believe in yourself. And this was the first start of Silata. So we created these jewelry pieces, and we spread them. But what we saw is that people would buy the jewelry, but we had this simple meditation app going with it, and people weren't really getting this meditation app. They didn't ask for the access. And I was like, this is not what I wanted. Like when I was that day that I told you about in the Himalayas, when I was thinking that whole day, like, what is my purpose in life? And I didn't have the answer that day, but I knew I had something that I could give the world, and Silata kind of became the answer. But then what I wanted to give the world wasn't another piece of jewelry. What I wanted to give the world is access to meditation, and to really like connect to yourself and build this daily habit. And so when I realized people were buying the jewelry but not meditating, that's when I said, okay, let's do this differently. Let's really create an app and focus on that app and spreading that. And let's really build it for women, because there is different meditation apps out there, and there's some really good ones, and they help you how to build a meditation routine, or how to teach you how to meditate. But there's nothing out there that's really helping women through all the life challenges that we go through. Like as women, we have a monthly period. As a woman, we become pregnant. That's how it is. We become pregnant. All women go in their life through menopause. And there's also this huge gender inequality still in the workplace. So female leadership is something that I experienced in my corporate background, that there's still such a gender bias. And I wanted to see, how can we support women? How can we make that women can stay as female and exactly as they are, like whatever they are, whoever they are, but feel comfortable in a workplace that is created by man for man according to male rules? And how can we break through these rules with our meditation? How can we give her the confidence to stand up for herself, to feel good about herself? Because what we see is there's so many women that leave the workplace when they get kids, when they get negative feedback, when there is a gender bias, when they go through menopause. These are all moments where women say, you know what, I don't like it here anymore. And instead of raising their hands and saying, hey, I don't want to do this anymore in this way, they actually just retreat. They are like, okay, I'll come out of this. I'll become a coach. I'll do it different. I will take care of the kids. And whatever it is they choose to do, they let go of the workplace because they don't feel that is their home anymore. They feel they are alone in that place. Mm-hmm. And so what we really are there for with Silata is to help these women to know they are not alone. And 25% of all pregnancies end in a miscarriage. No one talks about it because there's a lot of shame around this topic, and there's no need to be ashamed. There's absolutely no shame if there is a miscarriage. That is a natural fact of life, and it's a very common thing that happens. And so we want to open the discussion and make women aware that they are not alone, and help them to connect to other women somewhere on this planet that actually go through the same challenge at this moment and the same grief. Mm-hmm. But it can also be after having you give birth to a kid or your kids, how to go back to work and how to feel actually good in the workplace. While you have these beautiful kids at home that need your attention, how can you still focus and enjoy the workplace and be able to have that identity still of a businesswoman while you're a mom as well? And the same counts for all to give you one last example, menopause, there's so many women that are sent home with a burnout that are actually going through menopause because doctors don't know much about menopause and what it does to women. And women don't sleep. Because they don't sleep, they don't really function as they used to do. They have brain fog, they forget things, and they feel really bad about themselves, and they don't get the right treatment, and they don't get the right support. And so again, here we want to have these women to connect together. And our tool is meditation, because meditation changed my life, and it meant so much to me, and it still means every day so much to me. And it really helps me to be who I am and not being ashamed for who I am. And so that is what we created with Silat. It's kind of a community for women to break through taboos and really dare to be their best self, with meditation as the tool to do so.
It's amazing. I mean, what a powerful story, right? You had the perfect life by all measures, and you didn't feel fulfilled anymore, right? The joy you were chasing was fleeting, right? And how many of us have experienced that? I've experienced that, right? I think about my career as every time I would get promoted or get a new job, instantly in my brain, I was like, well, what's next? Always about what was the next thing, and what was, and I recognize that in myself. And it's not something I'm super proud of, but that's always how I've been. And so I never stopped to enjoy the moment I was in. It was always about what's next.
If this, then I'll be happy. If this, then I'll be happy.
Yeah. And it really is a mindset shift of happiness is just a state of who you are, the way you approach your life. It's not a thing you attain when you get the job or the car or the house or the spouse or whatever. It's just part of you. At least in my experience, I have found that joy and happiness have little to do with all the things going on around me, and everything to do with me and the way I approach everything that's happening in my life, and the way I choose to respond or not respond, or the boundaries I set, that type of thing. And I love that you get all of that, right? Specifically for women. And we do a pre-show touch base, and Veronique and I were talking before the show a little bit. And years ago, I worked for a manufacturing company, and we were talking about a specific product line, and it was very male dominated, this particular product. It was for the fishing industry. And so the conversation morphed into, okay, well, how do we bring women buy, right? We know from a consumer perspective that women buy more than men. So most marketing somehow targets women, even though it's a product for men. It's, oh, you want to buy the man in your life this thing, right? So we were talking about, how do we bring more women into this market for this particular product? And there was a phrase I had not heard before, but since I heard it the first time, now I've heard it a million times. And it's shrink it and pink it, right? And it's take whatever the product is that was developed and designed for a man, just make it smaller and make it pink, and women will buy it. And we were talking about this before the show, and you're like, the same thing happens in healthcare, right? Which I did not realize. So the fact that you've taken this step into creating something specifically for women to help them throughout their life, and whatever life stage they're in, is incredibly important and so needed. I've been having breakdowns on a daily basis lately. That whole burnout, that overwhelming feeling, my hormones are all over the place. And I finally found a female practitioner who gets it. And we're working through a strategy to get things back into balance. And meditation and the right kind of exercise is a part of that, because it's just not a one size fits all. And we really do see it in the workplace. I want to show really quickly just an image so everybody can see what the app might look like, and just how it can benefit you. We talk about the different stages women go throughout our lives. And there's the adolescence, and we first start with we discover, I guess, our hormones, and we get our periods and all of those things. So there's that part that we struggle with as women in junior high and high school. And then everything else happens. And not everyone has children. I've never given birth to a child, so I don't know what pregnancy looks or feels like. But I do have 2 children in my life that I get to parent. And so I understand what it's like to be a new mom or to be a female leader. And we may not attach ourselves to each and every one of these elements, but certainly we know people who do, and people who could benefit from it. I would love to know from your experience with your app and with your products, how are women responding, and how is it helping them in the workplace?
Yeah, so to be honest, it's so humbling to hear the feedback from women, because it is changing the way they work, the way they function. What they learn is to really, within the meditations, we have a little bit of coaching. So every meditation we link to an anchor, but we also have some coaching in there. And so when they do a series, they start with day 1 and then they go over like 20 or 30 meditations. And it's just so impressive if you hear how they start to shift from the identity that they were into an identity to more take life as it comes, just to accept things as they are. And you just mentioned before as well, like before you thought like you would be happy by a promotion or a new car, or like if this happens then. And that's only 10% of our happiness. Like our 10% of our happiness is actually formed by that. So if you don't have food to give to your kids, that is impacting your happiness level, but it's only a small amount. And so what we see also with our users is that they feel so much more happy in their life and feeling more content. They dare to stand up for themselves, so they start to love themselves more than they did before, as they start to realize like it is amazing what they're doing, right? And also something that we get back is that they learn they can be everything and do everything, but not at the same time. Like you can be the amazing mom, but not all the time. You can be this businesswoman still, even when you have kids, but not all the time. And how they start to really shift their lives and be more soft on themselves. That is very, very beautiful to see.
That's hard too. I have a business coach, and literally 45 minutes ago we were on a call together because I was having one of my periodic meltdowns of I can't manage everything, and this is falling through the cracks, and I have to prepare for this, and we need to look at that, and I have to build a pipeline from a sales perspective, which I feel like I'm not good at, and I love all of my clients and the work I do, but all of this other stuff is such a like there's just all the things. And we literally were on the phone, and she just said to me, I want you to breathe. You need to breathe through this and just like let's focus on one thing at a time. And I love what you said. You can have it all, but maybe not all at the same time. And I think the mixed message women get is so frustrating. When we look back, I can remember in the 80s, right? There was a commercial, and it was for a perfume called Angélique. And it was in the US. I don't know if you ever saw it or not, if you were in the US at the time or not. But this perfume ad it showed a woman, and she would wake up in the morning and get dressed, put on her business suit, feed the kids, go to work, come back from work, still in the suit. She would take off her glasses. Her hair would fall into this beautiful, hairdo, and she'd be cooking dinner, and then she'd serve the dinner to the husband, and then beautifully put the children to bed because they were perfect angels. But the theme song was I can bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan and never let him forget he's the man. That was the commercial. So we're sent these messages that say, yes, you can be the mom, you can be the breadwinner, you can make dinner, you can serve the man, you can do all these things. And and if that's the type of life you want, that's fabulous. Like, go for it. I'm not criticizing anybody because that's what makes some people happy, I assume. However, I think the unrealistic expectation that sets is that we believe we're supposed to be able to do everything, and whether you're serving a man or a woman or whomever, that's irrelevant. So don't come at me, people, from a D&I perspective. I get it. I'm gay myself. I get it. But the point of it is that if we compare men in the workplace and women in the workplace, how many men are expected to get up, feed the kids, drop them off at school, go to work all day, go home, cook dinner, bathe the kids, put the kids to bed, clean the house, make sure the laundry's done, make sure that the field trip has been paid for Friday so the kid can go, make sure the permission slips were signed, make sure the dogs and animals are taken care of, the trash has gone out, like all the things. And the construct for men in the workplace has always been that all they focus on is getting up and going to work and coming home, because the woman in the relationship, for the most part, took care of everything else. So when women entered the workforce, they still retained all those other responsibilities. They just added another layer of now going into the workforce. And it's been decades that women have been working full time outside of the home, and yet we still haven't gotten that balance worked out between men and women in the workforce and men and women at home.
Yeah.
And even in same-sex relationships, there's not always a balance. One person ends up carrying a heavier load than another. And so we have to find and set our boundaries and hold them so that we can create the balance that works for us. And I had a really interesting conversation with someone one time who said, attaining perfect balance should never be the goal. Because if you think about kids on a seesaw, right? And if you're that kid's toy, right? And the joy of the game is that you're going up sometimes and going down sometimes. And if you're in perfect balance, nobody's moving and it's stagnant. And so it's the give and take, I think, that we have to figure out versus trying to attain the perfection piece, because that's not real either. So what I love is that you're bringing in tools and mechanisms to help people find what's best for them, and that way they can create that in their lives, because it's not a one size fits all. And some people may want to go down a different path, and that's okay too. But it's what works for you as a female who needs support. Everybody needs it. I don't think anybody can just do everything at all times and do it well and not need that stability in their mind, right? Of that, the anchor that they need. And I really am so grateful that you've done this and that you're bringing this forward. I want to make sure that people can also find the app. So if you go to your app store, whether you're on Apple or Google, this is what you're looking for. You can download the app and check it out and see if it's something that might help you. I encourage you to do so. I'm excited about it. I'm going to go and do it today, because after my call with my business coach this morning and my little meltdown, I'm like, I really could use this. So I'm very excited about this. You mentioned something too that I thought was really interesting. Not interesting, sad, but the reality of miscarriages and how 25% of pregnancies are lost in miscarriage. And I didn't know the data behind that, so thank you for sharing that. I have seen recently a couple of organizations who are paying attention to this data. And I cannot remember the company. I wish I could remember the name of the company. If I remember it, I will share it with everyone. But there's an organization out there now offering, as part of their leave policies, that if you have a child, whether it's adoption, surrogacy, natural childbirth, whatever, any way you get the child, both men and women and anyone in between receives full pay for the entire time. They're also giving people the same full pay and time off for miscarriages.
And
And
that's so important.
so important. And I didn't realize until you said that impacts 25% of pregnancies, which leads me to believe, why is it 2022 and we're just now bringing in that kind of benefit and acknowledgement to something that's so impactful? I mean, that's just devastating to both parents, not just one, but both parents, or people involved in the pregnancy. That's a devastating event. And for companies to acknowledge that and offer the same amount of paid time off so that you can recover from that is incredibly important. And we need more and more of that. And I am just really surprised that we're just now looking at that as part of our leave policies. So it just, to your point earlier, we haven't paid attention. We just simply haven't paid attention to the way women's bodies work, the way women need support, the way women need to recenter ourselves in different ways than perhaps men do. And it's not that men are doing it wrong or that they're not getting it right for us. We have to be the ones who say, no, I deserve this and I'm going to figure this out for myself. We need them to be supportive and collaborative and be a part of that with us. But I don't think they can do it for us. It's just impossible, right? We have to do it for ourselves. At least that's my thought about it.
That's why the work you are doing, we are doing, and what we see around us coming up more and more is so important, because this workplace is created by men for men. And as you say, there's no bad intent. There's just a lack of knowledge and awareness. And I think when we get started to bring in this awareness, like, hey, realize this is going on in the workplace. A woman is different. The brain functions different. The whole body and the system is different. And so, maybe you should think about giving time off when someone has a miscarriage, because also then there becomes more awareness about this is going on and people can support the person going through that pain. But why do we send women home with a burnout when they go through menopause? Like, why is there so little understanding around that? I mean, we know why, because the woman body is very complex, and there's only been clinical studies since 93. So we have a huge lack of understanding of the woman body. And then women were there, as you also described earlier, right? Like the whole world, the whole system was built. The woman is taking care of the kids and she's at home, and the male is the person who brings in the money. And so still 76% of all people, so that includes a lot of women, believe that women stands for family and man stands for career. And so within that system, a lot has changed. And so, as you described before, women are not only still doing the lion's part of caretaking, and that's kids, but that's often also elderly. So they take care of the parents, of their partner, and their own parents. They are caretakers from nature. But then on top, they have a job, they work, and they also want to be that identity and feel successful in that life. But it's like, we didn't change the workplace yet. And if we look back, it's only been 100 years that women could vote. And so, we come a long way. There have been changes, but we still have a lot of work to do. And that's why I think this work is really important. And it's not like, oh my God, there's another thing that women need, or, oh, women now also have this menopause. No, they always had menopause. It's just that we didn't talk about it, and that women don't complain, and they just say, okay, well, this has been enough, I'll leave. And you don't want that, because we know when you have more women in the top, when you have more women in management team, as a CEO or in the board position, company profits go up. There's so many researchers on this that we can see, okay, it's better for your company profits to have more women, but on top, it's way better for the people in the company, because women are more empathetic, are more caring, and women are also caring more about the planet. If we want to save this planet, have more women in top of big corporations, because they take better decisions for the planet. And so overall, it all goes back also to the men, because when they better understand what a woman actually goes through, because when we also approach companies with menopause, for example, the men in the top level often have a woman at home who's going through menopause as well. And there's so much shame around this topic that often is not spoken about. So giving this information and giving that understanding is very important for women, for men, for kids, for the new generation. And that's why I think it goes way further than just like, oh, do we need another topic on women?
Yeah, no, I agree. And we need so much more compassion, I think, for what women go through. We've not talked about it, right? Talking about your period, talking about menopause, talking about hormones. Men have the luxury, the privilege of not having to talk about it, because they're not going through it. But when we think about sexual dysfunction and Viagra, right? And how quickly did that hit the market, is paid for and covered by insurance. Like, so men's sexual dysfunction and health is a top priority, but women's sexual health and sexual function is taboo to talk about. We don't want to talk about it. It's scary, right? And it's so frustrating, because if men want to have sex, they need another person, I think, for the most part, to do that with. Call me crazy, but for the most part. And the majority of our population around the planet is heterosexual. So that would say that women also need the same level of support for sexual health and satisfaction as men. And yet we have, what, a tenth or less of investment into understanding what's going on with women's sexual health. Like the gap in attention and funding and priority is so blatantly obvious. And yet we still are barely making inroads in these different spaces. And then in others, we're doing really well. So, the gender pay gap is closing. Is it equal yet? No. In some places, yes, and in others, not. So we are making traction in certain areas, but then there's others where it's just phenomenally ignored. And especially in second and third world countries, right, where they don't have budgets to invest in these types of studies. So the traditional male female roles are very much still ingrained in those areas, and women are ostracized for having a period, right? They're shunned from their village or their home while they have, for the 3 to 5 days or 7 days that they're actually, experiencing their period. So we've made advances in some places, and we've, not in others. And to have an app that anyone can access around the world for that support to help you get in the right mindset and help you get in touch with yourself and what brings you joy and how you can seek that out in your life, I think is phenomenally important. We need more of this type of opportunity out there for people so that they can be the best selves, be their best selves. And that's going to evolve, right? My best self today may not be my best self tomorrow. Okay. I need to, one, give myself grace at times, just like I would give to other people. But I also need to recognize that I'm constantly evolving. Everyone is. And that's okay too. It can change. What it looks like today is going to be different than it is tomorrow. It could be better. It could be different. But it's not always going to be the same. So to be able to get in touch with the core of who you are and adapt to those changes is really important for all of us. I'm so excited about bringing this forward to everyone in the audience so that they can start to check out what you have to offer and the benefits they can achieve. Now, if organizations, do you have an option for organizations if they want to bring this in as an enterprise benefit for their people? and how can an organization get in touch with you to talk about what that would look like?
Yeah, so they can get in touch through the website, or they can connect to me on LinkedIn. So we have corporate programs where we really look into offering, of course, first of all, the meditation app, but we start with a questionnaire to really understand what's going, because every company is different, and so we want to understand what are the main issues. Some companies are very young, and they struggle more with like women becoming pregnant and then not wanting to come back, or the bigger corporations where the menopause topic is very big. Female leadership is very important. And so we first look what is specific in that organization, the most important. And then we also have these workshops to create, first of all, awareness. And this is sometimes also with the men. So it can be with women, but it can be both with men and women, to create an awareness about these topics so that they understand it's here, to break through the taboos around these topics. And then we often also do closed workshops with women only, so they can share and they can really open up how they feel, and they realize, oh my God, you actually go through the same, I didn't know that. So they find these allies within the company, which is important to also feel you want to go to work, because often you don't want to go to that place, you don't feel at home. Like we were talking earlier about the family man and the man just does, or the financial caretaker, and the woman the social caretaker. When a guy puts a picture of his family on his desk, he's like the family man. Oh, look at him, he's such a nice guy, he has this picture of his family on the desk. When a woman puts a picture of her family on the desk, it's like, oh my God, she's a mom. Shouldn't she go home? Why is she still here? Maybe we shouldn't give her the promotion because like she's always leaving at 5, picking up the kids. And so women don't feel they can bring their whole self to the workplace. And as we also said before, there's no bad intent from men. There's just a lack of awareness. And this is what we do specifically for corporates, breaking that open, starting to talk about this, and then bring in support and repeat, like how do we then progress, and then can we go again? Where do we will also track the progress, and we can see over time, okay, after 6 months, where are we standing now, and what are the main issues right now, and how can we then further progress, so that slowly, because we're not going to change overnight, like that is not going to be an option, but then we can change slowly, bit by bit, and little by little we can get more, as you said, like we got equal pay. It's an easy measurement, right? Like it's very important. If I look back at my corporate experience, I was earning about half of someone like who was exactly doing the same job but was a guy, and so it's so important that we have equal pay, because we deliver the same and often even more. Like women are very determined to do their job well, but how can we put in more quotas? How can we measure the happiness among employees? How can we measure how they feel at work? And these are important elements that we bring into the workplace, so that they don't only see their monthly profits going up, but they also see that they actually a great place to work. And the most important thing is they will attract women talent, and they can keep their female talent, because when you lose a woman, I mean any person, it's very expensive to replace, to find recruiting costs, training costs, get a new person there. So you save a lot of costs by retaining your talent and by making the workplace a more safe environment and place where she wants to be. And that's not only ping pong tables and the foot soccer, right? You need to have things that are also for women, that women feel at home, and that's not pink it and shrink it, right? that's not the way to do it. And so that's how we build a program that the women have the meditation app. They can practice on that at home every day as often as they want. They can team up with their allies, but we also have these workshops to help in the workplace, and I think that's a very important part of our job.
That's huge. I love that you guys do that, really creating a customized program for an organization, understanding what they need, where their people are, and how they can benefit from really understanding the needs of the women in their organization. Pre-pandemic, we know women at that point were 51% of the workforce. Women are exceeding men in graduation rates from university. So there's so many data indicators that say like women have made huge inroads in the corporate world and in education over the past few decades, and yet we're still lagging behind in some of these other areas. So you're really, closing in on a gap that exists around the world in every organization. We also know, and I think you shared this earlier, that during the pandemic 30% of women have left the workforce.
Yeah.
We don't know if they're returning or not. And, some of that is clearly going to be retirement and that type of thing. But some of it was when kids had to homeschool, somebody had to go home and take care of them.
Women take that responsibility from nature. And so a lot of women during the pandemic, like 1/3 of women downsized or left the workforce completely because someone had to take care of the kids and they couldn't do everything. And so they were, I think even before the pandemic, there was already such a high level of pressure for women. If you look at the data, 80% of women feel that they're not good enough. 88% of women feel the pressure to be perfect. And women are twice as likely as men to get a depression in their lives. And as we spoke before, the world has changed, but then, or at least for women, but then the business world has not changed and the expectations have not changed. So it's still expected from women to do everything, and it's impossible. So women are already on that top level, trying to stay alive. And then the pandemic hit, and it was just too much. And so now we're 30 years back in time with the amount of women in the paid workforce, not in overall work. 75% of the unpaid work is done by women. But in the paid workforce, we really lost so many women, and we need to get them back. And what is another impact of that, what we see is that the women that stayed in the paid workforce, they suffer even more because they also maybe they didn't have kids, maybe they didn't have to care, but then because so many people left and so many women left, they got on extra roles. Also within companies, women often take the more caring, empathetic roles. And so there's even a huge additional pressure on the women that stayed. So if we don't do something, this is going to burst totally.
Yeah, I agree. And we're seeing a lot of people leaving the workforce because they just don't want it. They're not connecting to purpose. Their why is not being fulfilled anymore because corporate profit doesn't resonate with everyone. And so if we can't find a purpose for the work we do, and it doesn't fulfill something within us, then a lot of people are making that choice to, do gig work or do something part-time simply to pay the bills so they can enjoy their lives in different ways. We have to pay attention to that. We have to pay attention to the fact that what has been the primary metric of financial health within an organization is not the be-all end-all for the health and well-being of our people. And very, very different metrics. And we have to understand what we're looking at when we look at our data and how we're looking at it so that we are incorporating the needs of all of our people, men, women, everybody in between, regardless of who they are. And I do want to reemphasize, we're not blaming men. We're not saying it's the fault of men. We're saying that the workplace and the construct of work from in our entire history on this planet until the about the mid 60s when women really started entering the workforce. And then it was in the 70s when the birth control pill was legalized that women started entering the workforce in much higher numbers. And so all of this is relatively new when we think about the evolution of work and the evolution of our society and the zeitgeist of what's important to us now versus before. This, we're not blaming anyone because it really is relatively new, but the frameworks that existed for what work looked like and how we executed it were focused on men because they were the only people in the workforce or who were being paid to work until, like I said, the late 60s and the 70s. So when I think about that, it's our parents, maybe our grandparents, who really were blazing the trail for the first time of being in that corporate role. And women in those roles were tough women because they were, considered that they were taking jobs away from men. They were considered like it was not an easy road, that the sexual harassment, all of the things, the abuse that women faced who were brave enough to be in the workforce was significant. And so it's only like the Gen X group of people. I'm a Gen Xer, right? We're now in the top end of the age range of people who are in the workforce. So those women of the Gen X population, right, we're looking at hormonal changes, menopause changes, and all of this. And now it's part of our day-to-day conversation where it never was before, because generationally speaking, it was not okay to talk about it, but there weren't as many women in the workforce to even experience this and have this part of the dialogue. So these things that we're now talking about is baking into part of our benefit packages and our traditional work structures. It's really new in many ways in the past, 10 to 20 years, that there's been enough of a population experiencing these things to have these conversations. So I wanted to say that because I don't want anybody to think that either of us are saying anyone's at fault here. We're not bashing anybody. We're just saying the reality of the evolution of how this has happened. We have to catch up.
Yeah, totally.
We have to normalize these conversations and create the support systems and tools necessary so that we can have the equity we deserve to have. Because there's one thing to have equality, like you mentioned, women have been voting for 100 years, so we've got some equality pieces that we can check the box on, but the equity piece is still not there, and that's what's so important. The equity piece, the access to having what we need so that we can perform, is not necessarily there, and we see that in other areas of business too, not just with women. We see that with any marginalized groups. The equity is still a big gap. So,
and I think it's important that it's important that you mentioned this. Like, there is actually a very positive intent from men. So it's really not that it's not against anyone. It's just that we need to build this awareness so that we can change. And I know a lot of men also want this, and they do want it, but I think we need to create role models, because as you were rightly saying, it's only the Gen X that now things are getting in a different, it starts to change, but where we need role models. We need, even if you look at kids programs, what kids are viewing is still very much guys, and it's still a lot around the boys, and the woman is taking care of the households, and the guy is doing and then the girl is kind of chit-chatting and doing shopping, and we need to change even these kids shows. We need to change that we have role models. So at least I think a lot of the kids growing up now see that their mom is working, and see that, like, she's, maybe it's not 50-50, but there is already like, oh yeah, my mom is also in a job, and she has a career, and she actually, I don't know what she's doing, but it's important for her. So it's not only the dad that is going away from the home. And I think when we create more role models of strong women, and we see this also now in more publicly, these women really clearly supporting other women. I think that's another thing that's so important, because women are often still drowning, they maybe not supporting other women. And I see something happening right now. There's so many very strong, powerful women that do stand up and say, I want to support other women. And I think that is also an important element to show to the world and to show to others, like, we can do this together. And it needs the effort of all of us to make a change. And then we'll get there. We will.
We will. I do agree. I believe we will get there. And the role models are so important. Representation is so important, right? We talk about that a lot in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space, about representation mattering, that little Black girls need to see adult Black women successful in whatever their career choice might be. Or if they're a stay-at-home parent, that's also a choice that you can make, and there's no shame in making that decision. So women of any race, any background, any culture need to see other women who are in whatever role they want to be in, but also, instead of saying, I can do it all the time, setting the boundaries to say, I can do this really well, and I can do this, but here's the support I need to do that. A friend of mine has a nanny, and the nanny picks up her kids from school, gets them home, gets them a snack, makes sure their homework is done, gets them, either, washes dishes here and there, just entertains them for a while until, mom and dad are done working. And then they either work on dinner together or they help prep dinner, something like that. And when I first heard about it, I was like, wow, I guess she just doesn't want to do those things. And then I found myself almost being a little judgy about it. And I had to catch myself saying, why am I being judgy? She's freaking brilliant, right? Like, if I had somebody who could go and pick up my kids from school, I wouldn't be disrupted at 3:00 every afternoon for an hour where I have to go get them and then come back and finish what I'm doing. So, I think we also have to get out of our own head sometimes and see there are other ways to accomplish things. It doesn't look the same. And let's not be so hard on each other. When we see somebody stepping out and trying something different, if it's working for her, let's applaud and celebrate that, and not be like, oh, well, she's got a nanny or she's got support here. Of course she can do it. She's got this and this. Well, figure out a way for you to do that too. So I just think it's never going to be a one size fits all. We have to just figure out what works for us. But we do need our workplaces and our organizations and our businesses to keep all of that in mind. So when they are reviewing benefits for the next year, when they are reviewing paid time off policies, when they are reviewing their internal movement and their promotion process, is that equity piece there? Is it at the table? And are we considering, how does that look for this person? How does that look for this person? Women don't typically work rotating shift work because it creates such a burden on childcare. So how do we support that? What can that look like? So there's so much we could talk about, but we have to wrap up because we are going to run over our time. Veronique, this has been such an amazing conversation. I am so thrilled to bring this forward to our audience and to share not just your product, but your mission, why it's so important to you and why it should be important to everyone else. So again, if you haven't checked it out, guys, please make sure you take a moment, go to the App Store, download Silata and see if it's for you. Check out all of these amazing things that you can tap into as a woman for support and to help you really, I think, kind of just gain control of the way in which you approach what you do so that you have your own personal strategy, because we need that. We can't just leave it to chance. We have to take control over what we can control so that we can respond appropriately to the things we can't control. At least that's how my life has to work anyway. I need to control what I can so that when all those things that come at me that I have no control over, I'm in the right mental and emotional state to respond to those things appropriately. Because life is always going to throw things at us that we don't know about and we can't control, but we can control the way we react and respond.
Ah, yes, I love that. That's so important to remember. Like, we're always in charge of the response.
Yeah.
And yeah, and as you mentioned, like setting boundaries and supporting her to set her own boundaries so that things can change. And I just wanted to point out one more thing that you mentioned, because I think it's also really important to realize, like, we're all about for her to be who she is. If she wants to be a stay-at-home mom, that is totally amazing. Like, and she does that with all her love and all her passion. Go ahead, just do what you want to do. You want to have a nanny, go and get a nanny, but do what you want, not what you think is right. Because I did that for so long. Like, I lived a life that what I thought was right for me. Just do what is really right for you, and don't judge others. Like, let's not judge ourselves for it. Let's
Right.
not judge others, but respect that everyone is different, and that's the beauty of it. And that's so beautiful. Women are different than men. You can be man, female, you can be non-binary, whatever you are. Just be that, and don't
Right.
try to be someone you're not. And I think that is what really will change a lot in your own happiness.
I agree. I agree. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to have this conversation. I hope you'll come back and join us for another episode. We'll talk further about your organization and maybe some stories of women who have really benefited. I think our audience would love to hear some of that. So thank you again for being